Week 12 of the fantasy football season is here. That means we are only weeks away from the fantasy playoffs. Each and every matchup, each and every lineup that you are going to set, it is so crucial here. And I'm going to be going through each and every wide receiver going into week 12 of the fantasy football season. 32 teams, all 6-team matchup, no teams on a bye as we go into this week. Let's not waste any more time and get straight into our first matchup. Going into our first Thursday night matchup here are Thanksgiving games, 3 Thanksgiving games, so stay tuned. In our first one, the Green Bay Packers at the Detroit Lions, a great divisional matchup. Normally we will see Aaron Rodgers duel it up here on Thanksgiving Day, but that is no longer the case. We have Jordan Love and Jared Goff. Should still be a good game here at the Packers side of the ball. By the way, over-under is 46.5. The favorites are the Detroit Lions after that comeback win against the Chicago Bears. America's favorite team? I don't know. I think so. As you can see here, starting off at the Green Bay Packers side of the ball, risky start for me is Christian Watson. Yes, he does find the end zone here, but only was targeted 4 times, called 2 out of 4 targets that day. That touchdown did save his day, so I'm not necessarily believing of him being a risky start. And, you know, the Detroit Lions are a middle-of-the-pack defense when it does give up points to the wide receiver position, so definitely keep that in mind. But 2 players that I do want to start on the Green Bay Packers, emerging players here, that is Romeo Doubs and Jalen Reeves. You can both see here 2 great games that we saw. 5 out of 6 targets for Romeo and a touchdown, over 16 fantasy points. He's scored a touchdown in 4 out of the last 5 games after the bye week from weeks 7 to 11. That is pretty impressive here for Romeo. And then Jaden Reed, coming out, emerging, getting utilized in different ways in the backfield, jet sweeps. He's also getting the target share as well, seeing one of his highest snap percentages with 69. His second highest snap percentages this year was 69%. Caught 4 out of 6 targets, over 19 fantasy points here. He does rush in for a touchdown, doesn't catch a touchdown, but somebody that I am willing to start coming into this week if I do need a high upside play, depending on your league. And obviously on the Lions side of the ball, the only person you are going to be starting here is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Really, to be completely honest, wide receiver 6 on the year. Jameson Williams, does find the end zone here, only catches 2 out of 3 targets, so still not getting the target, still not getting the opportunity that we hoped and expected. But hey, hopefully we can see that grow here against the Green Bay Packers. So once again, the over-under is 46.5, and the Lions are in favor coming into this Thursday night game. All right, our second Thanksgiving Thursday night matchup here at the NFC East, the Washington Commanders versus the Dallas Cowboys. 48.5 is the over-under. Pretty high over-under coming into this week here. Starting off at the Washington side of the ball, a crazy loss to my beloved Giants. I thought it was stupid that we won, but we are here. The people that you are going to be starting, the only person that I truly believe is a good start or a decent start is going to be Terry McLaurin here, wide receiver 18. Yes, he was kind of held in check with under 10 fantasy points against the Giants, at least for the past 2 weeks as well. The Seattle Seahawks and the Giants are going to be going against Stephon Gilmore this week, but you have to expect that this team, Terry finds an open opportunity. He finds something happening here, and then Curtis Samuel and Jahan Dotson. Curtis Samuel was ejected in this game early on, only caught one out of 2 passes, so you didn't really see the full effect. That's where we saw Jahan Dotson does get that red zone opportunity, finding the end zone with over 11 fantasy points. I still believe both of these guys are risky starts coming into this week. 2 players I am not willing, to put it all in on, depending on what you have. Maybe you have some injuries that you need. That's why these guys are risky starts coming into this week. By the way, the Dallas Cowboys do give up the 3rd least amount of fantasy points to the wide receiver position, so definitely keep that in mind. And the only person on the Dallas Cowboys side of the ball that I am willing to start is CD Lamb. Caught 6 out of 9 targets and a touchdown, over 16 fantasy points, wide receiver 3 on the year. This is somebody that I'm willing to start. Now, I do have Brandon Cooks and Michael Gallup as must-sits, But I will not be surprised if somehow the Washington Commanders do come out swinging early and often, and then obviously we know how they tend to lose a lead in the second half. I will not be surprised if one of these guys do take off. You know, we've seen Brandon Cooks scored at 32 plus points or 15 plus points in a game, but then you see him going the next week only catching one pass or two passes or three passes. So I think this is a risky opportunity, still must sits, but I understand if you want to take a shot on Brandon Cooks or Michael Gallup, specifically Brandon Cooks, excuse me. So keep that in mind. Once again, the Commanders give the third most points to the wide receiver position, and the Dallas Cowboys give the third least amount of points to the wide receiver position. All right, our next Thanksgiving divisional matchup here, going to the West Coast, the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. The over-under is 42.5. I found this pretty surprising. I thought this would be a higher over-under. Maybe that's because the Seahawks are maybe struggling the past couple of weeks. Obviously, the San Francisco 49ers are favorites coming into this game. Obviously, you're starting Deebo Samuel and you're starting Brandon Ayuk, and both of these are for the San Francisco 49ers side of the ball. Obviously, we saw Brandon Ayuk take off. You know, he does cast that touchdown over 150 yards, 26 fantasy points. Deebo Samuel still not having these boom games that we're hoping and expecting. You know, caught 3 out of 4 targets this past week, 9 fantasy points. But I guess they really didn't need to kind of get into all of that. Maybe against here, the Seattle Seahawks, this is where he could potentially be utilized a little bit more. We'll wait and see, but you're still starting Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Going to the Seattle Seahawks side of the ball here, DK Metcalf is somebody, look, he did have 2 big back-to-back weeks against Washington, against the Rams. I think in my opinion, I think you have to start him without a doubt. And the same thing has to go with Tyler Lockett. 2 wide receivers that you kind of have to come in and start now. Anything can happen. But the good part is that the San Francisco 49ers do give up a decent amount of points to the wide receiver position. They are currently top 10. The thing is, you know, anything can happen. And what's really good about this matchup is that you expect the 49ers to be up early and often to where the Seattle Seahawks is going to have to throw the ball. They do lose Kenneth Walker. I'm pretty sure he's going to miss this game, which might have to rely on Zach Charbonnet. Not saying they're not going to give him the opportunity, but just thinking about, hey, maybe they're going to go in a different route and be a little bit more of a pass happy and not really give the opportunity to Charbonnet. That's one scenario. But anyways, you can see here, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett are must starts and spot starts, depending on if one of these guys do miss this week due to limitations, due to injuries, whatever the case may be, as Tyler Lockett was coming in a little bit injured too this past week. Jackson Smith-Njigba could be a good plug and play, which is why he is a spot star for me, depending on your lineup. All right, going into our first ever Black Friday game, a game on a Friday. That is the Miami Dolphins at the Meadowlands with the New York Jets here. Clearly, the Miami Dolphins are a favorite of 40.5 is the over-under here. And obviously, you're going to be starting Tyreek Hill. He's still doing his thing, still having big games, over 30 points against the Raiders. I mean, you kind of expected that. Now, the person I did want to talk about is Jalen Waddle. Coming into this matchup specifically against the New York Jets, who currently give up the least amount of fantasy points to the wide receiver position, he is not somebody that I'm comfortable starting. This is why he is a spot star for me. Depending on your matchup, depending on what you need, depending on, you know, whatever situation you are in, there might be better opportunities or maybe safer floors when you go into this week. Clearly, this past 2 weeks against the Chiefs, against the Raiders, scoring under 10 fantasy points, being very up and down, inconsistent. Then he has a spurt where in weeks 5 to 8, he has averaging over 12 fantasy points per game, which is good. But then the inconsistencies is up and down. I think there's a lot of people, in my opinion, that I would say, look, you think of some of these players coming into this week. You think of Courtland Sutton. Or do you start Courtland Sutton or a Jalen Waddle, right? Do you start maybe a Jacoby Myers or Drake London or Rashee Rice over Jalen Waddle? Do you start Zay Flowers over Jalen Waddle? Now, clearly, some of these matchups, some of these players, no doubt about it, are less talented than Jalen Waddle. I do believe Jalen Waddle is a top 10 dynasty wide receiver without a doubt. But based off the matchup and what you need going into the playoffs in the next couple weeks, What do you need this week? And this is why he is a spot start for me. And the same thing could be said with Garrett Wilson. Now Tim Boyle is going to be the starting quarterback for this offense, going against Miami Dolphins, who do give up a decent amount of points to the wide receiver position, 11th most points to the wide receiver position. But I'm not sure if I want to rely on Tim Boyle giving him the ball. So keep that in mind. He is a spot start where there could be better opportunities going into week 12. All right, the start of a 1 p.m. slate game, Saints at the Falcons, a great divisional matchup game here. The Saints are favored coming into this week, both coming off a bye week. 42.5 is the over-under. Let's keep this one pretty short and sweet. Chris Olave, you're going to be starting on the Saints side of the ball. He is somebody you're going to have to rely on here. Wide receiver 17 on the season, has been pretty consistent, I would say, just really bad quarterback play. And if Jameis Winston is going to be playing coming into this week, that can be really special, as Derek Carr is still in the concussion protocol, which is going to be interesting. Michael Thomas, I'm not starting, and I wouldn't be starting Rashid Shaheed. English is difficult as well. And on the other side of the ball for the Atlanta Falcons is Drake London. Now, we heard Desmond Ridder is going to be the starter coming into this week. I don't want to lean on someone like a Drake London, another spot start. Believe in the talent like a Garrett Wilson. Believe in the talent like a Jalen Waddle. Just the quarterback play with the inconsistencies, there might be better plays that you can go on and plug and play coming into week 12. Once again, as we're getting closer to the playoffs. All right, going into our next matchup here, another divisional matchup. A lot of divisional games so far this week. Steelers at the Cincinnati Bengals here. Steelers are favored with 34.5 is the over-under coming into this week. Now, as you can see here, I'll keep this short and sweet because I think the same narrative, the same conversation is going to be said for each and every one of these wide receivers. I do have every single one of these players on both sides of the ball as a risky start. Why? Because of inconsistent quarterback play. You can see Kenny Pickett hasn't been the guy. You can see Joe Burrow is no longer he's no longer going to be playing this year. I was going to say no longer with the team, but he is out, and Jake Browning is going to be taking the opportunity. Now, these guys, we believe in the talent, but we just don't believe in the quarterback. And I'm not confident in telling you that you should be starting someone like a Jamar Chase with confidence, someone like a Deontay Johnson with confidence. Now, can either one of these guys go off this week? Absolutely. But I don't think anyone in the fantasy community can tell you who that's going to be. This is why George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd are all risky starts coming into this week. Look, we can have more conversations coming into the live stream, but I think the conversations are going to be really resulted around a lot of these players. Would you rather start a Drake London or a Deontay Johnson? Would you rather start a Drake London or Jamar Chase? That's how serious these conversations are. Would you rather start Garrett Wilson or Jamar Chase? Would you rather start Jalen Waddle or Jamar Chase, Tyler Lockett or Jamar Chase, just because the quarterback play is going to be better? These are the type of conversations that you have to ask yourselves, the type of questions you have to ask yourselves, the type of conversations we're going to be having on our live stream as well. So make sure you join us throughout the week. Yes, I know it's Thanksgiving, but we're still going to be live for some parts to help you guys going into this week. So once again, every single one of these guys are a risky start for me going into week 12. All right, our next matchup here, the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Houston Texans, another divisional matchup. The Jags are actually favored coming into this game with 46.5. And starting off with the Jags side of the ball, I do have Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk as must starts. Yes, Calvin Ridley did have a good bounce back game. Can you trust him? Absolutely not. But when it comes down to these conversations, Jamar Chase, Drake London, you think of Jalen Waddle, you think of all these other players that I would rather, you are questioning. I think Calvin Ridley you would still rather go with just based on the quarterback play, because we know Trevor Lawrence still has a good opportunity. And not only that, Zay Jones, we have seen where, Zay Jones has been a good benefactor for Calvin Ridley when he is on the field. And we saw that this past week. This first time Zay Jones has been back on the field since week 5, since the last time Calvin Ridley had over 20 fantasy points so far this year. That was with Zay Jones. And I would say the same thing with Christian Kirk. I'm still starting him. I know he had a down week, but I'm still trusting in Christian Kirk to be that safety blanket if Calvin Ridley gets shut. down. Then on the Texans side of the ball, Nico Collins and Tank Dell. Both of these guys seeing over double-digit fantasy points. Nico Collins, 13 fantasy points this past week, 11 targets. You love to see. And then Tank Dell caught 8 out of 10 and a touchdown, over 140 yards, nearly 150 yards, over 28 fantasy points. You start him. Noah Brown, I think if both Nico Collins and Tank Dell are in, I am going to be sitting him, and he is also facing an injury, so keep that in mind. All right, our next matchup here, Bucks at the Colts. Not a divisional matchup, by the way, guys. The over-under is 43 coming into this game, and the Colts are favored, and they are coming out of a bye week, so that's going to be very interesting. And the Bucks coming off a tough loss versus the San Francisco 49ers. But starting off at the Bucks side of the ball, you are going to be starting Mike Evans with confidence. He is continuing to do his thing even versus the San Francisco 49ers. Caught 5 out of 12 targets and a touchdown, over 15 fantasy points, wide receiver 11 so far on the year. You start him with confidence. And then Chris Godwin, somebody that has been a little bit up and down. He had a good little run here from weeks 4 to 8 where he had, double-digit fantasy points. Then in the last 3 games from weeks 9 onwards, under 10 fantasy points. So there's a little bit of inconsistency there. He is a spot start depending on what you need. And on the Colts side of the ball, you start Josh Downs coming out of that injury. I'm pretty sure he will be back. If he is back, you start him with confidence. The same thing with Michael Pittman. Both of these guys have been good targets for Gardner Minshew coming into this year. So keep that in mind. Over under, once again, 43.5 in favor of the Indianapolis Colts. All right, our next matchup here. I don't want to waste any more time. Patriots at my Giants here. The Patriots are favored coming into this game. But as you can see, keep it short and sweet. Everyone is a must-sit outside of Pop Douglas, Demario Douglas. 3 out of the last 4 games, he has scored over 10 fantasy points, which, look, has been pretty interesting here if you do need a spot start. Once again, maybe you're in a deeper league, maybe in a 14, 16-man type of league. Demario Douglas could be somebody that you can plug and play coming into this week, so keep that in mind. Both of these defenses are bad. Both of these offenses are bad. Don't expect high-scoring opportunities from either of these guys. Good luck in this matchup. Okay, our next matchup here, Panthers at the Titans. Come on, Panthers. I need you to win so we can have the #1 overall pick, at least the Giants, which is really hard now that they won last week. Anyways, the Titans are favored coming into this game. 37 is the over-under coming into this week. Another matchup that is going to keep short and sweet. Adam Thielen, you start. We saw 8 out of 11 targets this past week, over 14 fantasy points against the Dallas Cowboys. And then DeAndre Hopkins on the other side of the ball here, caught 4 out of 5 passes, did catch that bomb touchdown from Will Levis, which essentially saved his day, where he scores over 15 fantasy points. Genuinely, everyone else you are not starting. You're not starting Mingo, Marshall, Chark, and Treylon Burks, unfortunately. Once again, keep it short and sweet. The Titans are favored coming into this matchup. All right, the start of our afternoon games. Rams at the Arizona Cardinals, another divisional matchup where the Cardinals are favored, another team that I need to win so my Giants can have a top 2 pick. So shout out to the Cardinals here. Shout out to Kyler Murray. We're going to keep this one short and sweet as well. Puka Nacua, you start. Cooper Kupp, you start. And I do have Tutu Atwell as a spot start, as if Cooper Kupp is going to miss this game, which looks like it is very likely, and if he doesn't, obviously you start him. But we've seen the success with Tutu Atwell when Cooper Kupp has been out in the first start of the season, the first 3 games of the season. He was averaging over 15 fantasy points per game in the first 3 games, getting those opportunities. So keep that in mind. Now, on the other side of the ball, Hollywood Brown, I know he's having a little bit of a rough start, but you start Hollywood Brown still with confidence. Michael Wilson is going to be a spot star for me. He did miss this past week, but the week before against Atlanta Falcons, if that call wasn't turned back, that touchdown wasn't turned back, we are talking about him differently coming into this week. Cardinals are favored. The over-under is 44.5 coming into this week. A good divisional matchup where I need the Arizona Cardinals to win. Our next matchup here, Browns at the Denver Broncos, going all the way to the mile here. Shout out to you guys, Broncos fans. You guys be feeling very, very good right now so far, especially with the way Russ is playing, and this defense is kind of picking it up here. Browns side of the ball, by the way, over-under is 36.5 in favor of the Broncos, of course. Brown side of the ball here, Amari Cooper, a risky start I do have coming in. Obviously with DTR, just hasn't been the guy. I don't know why they started him. I'd rather have PJ Walker in there personally, but he's going to be going against Patrick Surtain, so he's not somebody I'm willing to start. But understand, if you have to start him, that's why he is a risky start. Elijah Moore is a must sit, even though he did have his second highest outing so far this year, but still not willing to start. And on the Broncos side of the ball, the only person I'm willing to start is Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton has scored a touchdown in 8 out of the last 10 games he has played. By the way, he's had a bye week within those weeks. 8 out of the last 10, he has scored. The last time he didn't score a touchdown was in week 5. It is kind of ridiculous. He is going off right now. He is very underrated. He has been one of the most consistent wide receivers so far this year. I'm pretty sure he leads this leagues, or is tied top 3 in wide receivers who scored a touchdown so far this year, which is amazing. Jerry Jeudy is also a risky start. Sees his sees another double-digit game here, but not somebody I'm willing to start. Like, good defense here for the Cleveland Browns. Give the second least amount of fantasy points to the wide receiver position. Not somebody I'm willing to start with Jerry Jeudy, which, keep that in mind. Same thing with Courtland Sutton. Is a risky opportunity to start him. But even if it's a garbage touchdown, he saves your day. So keep that in mind, which some of these matchups has been a garbage touchdown for Courtland Sutton. Once again, Broncos are favored coming into this game, 36.5. Good luck in this matchup. Our next matchup here, another divisional matchup. Kansas City Chiefs versus the Las Vegas Raiders, going to Las Vegas as well. Chiefs just coming off that upsetting loss versus the Philadelphia Eagles, and you expect the Chiefs to come back with vengeance, and all that loss that they just took is going to go on the Raiders, which is unfortunate for them. Kansas City clearly are in favor. 44.5 is the over-under. And to start off on the Chiefs side of the ball, Rashee Rice, I think if he can't do it against the Eagles, who currently give the most points to the wide receiver position, I'm not sure when he's going to do it again. Not saying he can't, just saying maybe it was just a good game. Right? Maybe the weather was affecting. I'm not necessarily sure, but keep that in mind. I do have him as a risky start coming into this matchup. Everyone else on the Chiefs side of the ball, I am sitting. And the Raiders side of the ball is Devontae Adams, coming off a big game here. Caught 7 out of 13 targets, a touchdown, over 21 fantasy points, 2 back-to-back good games for Devontae Adams against some tough defenses against the Jets, and the Miami was a middle-of-the-pack defense. But you started with confidence, and then Jacoby Myers here, 2 back-to-back games under 10 fantasy points, a risky start coming into this week. So definitely keep that in mind. Once again, Chiefs are favored coming into this matchup. All right, our next matchup here, Bills at the Eagles. Obviously, the Eagles are favored coming into this matchup. 47.5 is the over-under. Starting off at the Bills side of the ball, you start Stephon Diggs, even though he's been having 2 back-to-back games under 7 points. That is unheard of. That is crazy, but I think they're starting to run the ball more. Keep that in mind. So they're starting to find success on the ground, even though they lost against Denver. But anyways, Stephon Diggs, you start with confidence, still wide receiver 4, still gonna get those opportunities. Don't panic here. Gabe Davis is a risky start as always. And a nice little shout out to Shakira. I mean, the last 3 games, he has seen his highest snap percentages so far in his career. 4 games, highest snap percentages in his career. Seeing the opportunities, seeing the targets. Well, not really seeing the targets, but making most of those opportunities as well. Not somebody I'm willing to start, but somebody to keep an eye out on, maybe in a dynasty perspective. You just never know. And going to the Eagles side of the ball, obviously the 2 guys you start, Devonta Smith, who just had a big game with 15 fantasy points there, almost caught that touchdown, or he did catch the pass, but almost got into the end zone. It was just 1 yard short. A.J. Brown held him to check. Only 1 point. That was absolutely crazy. Still a top wide receiver that you start with confidence. Keep that in mind. Once again, favored are the Eagles. 47.5 is the over-under. Going into the Sunday night matchup, Ravens at the Chargers. This should be a good game. At least you hope so. Ravens are favored. 46.5 is the over-under. And starting off at the Ravens side of the ball here, and that is Zay Flowers. He is a must-start coming into this game. Why? Because the Chargers do give up the most amount of fantasy points, or the second, most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. And not only that, Mark Andrews is also no longer with the team. He is out for the season with that ankle injury. There is some opportunity or optimism that he does come back maybe in the playoffs, depending on what that looks like. I'm not necessarily sure. But Zay Jones, you have to think that they're going to result on him, leaning on him a little bit more coming into this week here. Now going to his other teammate, and that is Odell Beckham. The last 3 games, over 11 fantasy points here, finding the end zone in 2 out of the last 3 games. Big chunk plays. The yards after the catch is exactly what you see with Odell, but he is questionable with that shoulder injury. He's not expected to be out long term, but if he does end up getting that extra time, I guess you can say, with that shoulder injury because of Sunday Night Football, maybe he does play. Not saying somebody you should start, but a risky start if you are in deeper leagues. Now, going to the other side of the ball, Keenan Allen is the only person you can start there. Quentin Johnston, man, if you don't caught that ball, man, what a world we could have been living in. I'm still believing him, still early, but maybe I am in take lock. But I love Quentin. I still believe in him, but he is not somebody that you are starting with confidence whatsoever after that drop there. But Keenan Allen, you start wide receiver 2 on the year so far, over 27 fans. Look, 10 out of 16 targets, 116 yards and a touchdown. Genuinely, Justin Herbert only has eyes for this man. And when he is gone, he is going to hone in on that person, and whoever that person is, you hope that he's on your fantasy team. Let me tell you that. So keep that in mind. Ravens are favored once again. 46.5 is the over/under. All right, and our Monday night game, a last divisional game, Bears at the Vikings. The over/under is 45.5 here, and the Vikings are clearly favored coming into this week. Okay, hear me out. Starting off with the Bears aside of the ball. Not even hear me out. It's nothing special, let's be honest. I just said hear me out. DJ Moore, you start wide receiver 8. He is better with Justin Fields. Caught 9 out of 7 targets, 96 yards and a touchdown, 22 fantasy points. Talk it up. Now on the Viking side of the ball, if Justin Jefferson plays, you start him. But I doubt he's going to play. They do have this game and then a bye week. So why would you play him? Personally, in my opinion. But look, you start him if he plays. Jordan Addison is the one that I want to talk about here. Didn't have the best game against the Denver Broncos. You had to expect that because he was going against Patrick Surtain. But he should have a better game coming against the Chicago Bears, who is a middle-of-a-pack defense when it comes down against the wide receiver position. I expect him to have a better game coming into this week. Someone that is a must start here. Once again, over-under is 45.5 on Monday Night Football. That is every single matchup coming into this week, guys. Good luck going into this week. Happy Thanksgiving. Spend time with family. We're going to be on and off of the live streams and some of our content here because we're going to be spending time with family as well. So keep that in mind. But we appreciate each and every one of you. Once again, happy Thanksgiving. And as always, it's all love.
Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.